Everyone has that one friend that will take things too far. Fortunately, they don't usually have adamantium claws and a healing factor. Say it with me. He's the best at what he does, and what he does isn't nice. There's a lot of shade under the umbrella of isn't nice, but for Wolverine, that generally means lots of punch stabbing and slashing and generally breaking stuff.
Sounds like fun.
If you take that behavior as a baseline, Wolverine on a good day, there have been some times where he's taken it to some rather intense extremes. From page and screen, here are a few. There are a few moments in education that stick with you. Things like I before E has enough exceptions that it's just confusing. The ability to name all the state capitals never comes up again. And say it with me, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
I am the smartest man alive!
Eventually, you learn about regeneration by the science teacher talking about cutting flatworms in half, only to have them regenerate into 2 flatworms. Aside from giving you your first existential moment contemplating which flatworm is the original, it introduces you to the extremes of regeneration. So how much Wolverine has to be left for Wolverine to regenerate? He says the gene for regeneration is every one of his cells, as if to prove that there have been 2 extreme cases of regeneration. The first is in Annual X-Men number 11, where Xavier's star students faced off against the Horde who, among other things, tore out Wolverine's heart. Rude, but heart pulling is messy business, and a drop of Wolverine's blood gets on the crystal of ultimate vision, causing him to not only completely regenerate, but gain cosmic powers as well. Wolverine's not greedy though. Rapid healing that gives him an extended lifespan, animal senses, and extendable claws is enough, and he gave those cosmic powers back. That's not the only time he's come back from practically nothing. During the Civil War event, Wolverine took a full blast from Nitro, burning him down to his adamantium skeleton, giving him that gnarly chrome Ghost Rider look, only to have him regenerate slowly. Some teams are not exactly power balanced. Hawkeye might be an incredible marksman and a skilled super spy, but one of his teammates is the literal Norse god of thunder. Clint has to take it for granted that his teammate won't just squish him with a hammer because he's in a mood. And he's not the only one. The Hulk is arguably stronger, depending on how angry he is, and is completely prone to getting into moods. Wolverine is no stranger to moods himself, and for that reason, a lot of his teammates are a little uneasy that a mood will lead to Wolverine taking out that mood on his team, instead of putting on a patch and worrying the people of Madripoor. The start of Old Man Logan revealed that this is a reasonable fear, as it starts off with Mysterio fooling Wolverine that the X-Men are all Marvel's worst villains attacking the mansion, tricking him into killing off all the X-Men. Maybe all of those years that Magneto was marionetting Wolverine, he just needed to trick Wolverine into attacking the X-Men. Since making his debut in the pages of the Hulk, Wolverine and the Hulk have had a long and contentious history. They're the pair that just can't find a way to get along. They've had some brutal fights that include Wolverine stabbing the Hulk in the head and the Hulk ripping Wolverine in half. In this case, it's the top half that's the original Wolverine. Now that I think about it, what happened to the bottom half? Is it one of those William Riker, Thomas Riker things? Is there some alternate regrowth Logan just drinking quietly in Madripoor? Easily the craziest encounter is from the Old Man Logan storyline, where the Hulk started to experiment with being a kaiju and had to grow to enormous size, big enough to swallow Wolverine whole. Wolverine, being Wolverine, simply clawed his way back out like some sort of angry little xenomorph.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
One of the biggest litmus tests for a superpowered being is to compare it to the most destructive thing we have in the real world, the nuclear bomb. Most of your average superheroes would still meet their end after a nuclear blast, but there are a few heroes in the survive a nuclear blast category, and wouldn't you know it, Wolverine is one of them. In Venom number 9, Wolverine found himself in a love triangle of sorts between an offshoot of the Venom symbiote and a pair of ne'er-do-wells named Frankie and Vic. When the symbiote went for the obvious choice of a host and the regenerating adrenaline junkie, Frankie and Vic decided if they couldn't have it, no one could. In the most final way they could think of, nuking a small Canadian town. That's not very polite. Oh, sorry about that there, bud. When the smoke cleared, Logan got up from the bottom of the crater, brushed himself off, and then headed straight for the people who just tried to blow him up, as you do. In the movie The Wolverine, Logan even acted as a bomb shelter for someone else during the bombing of Hiroshima, leaving him just a little crispy on the back. One of the defining factors in comics regarding Wolverine is how short he is. He's 5 foot 3 inches of unbridled rage. This makes him, well, kind of tossable by the larger heroes. Rather famously, the fastball special has become a signature move between Colossus and Wolverine, where Colossus chucks Wolverine at whatever needs a good slice up. In the, let's say, problematic X-Men Origins Wolverine, we got a glimpse of that when Wolverine enacted his own fastball special. On the run from attackers in a helicopter, Wolverine decided the best defense was a good offense. After engaging the classic superhero claw turn, where a superhero tears up a piece of public road for a slightly tighter turning radius, Wolverine used his motorcycle as a launching pad, hurling himself at a helicopter, cutting it up in the process. A lot of heroes have taken on aircraft, but not many have cut a revolving rotor into 4 pieces as a part of the process. I don't think the bad guys are getting their helicopter deposit back. There's an unspoken rule with ninjas. The more there are, the less effective they are. You might think that it's because when it comes to ninjas, teamwork does not make the dream work, but really it's just a function of who the target is. Generally speaking, if this isn't the job for one ninja, it's not going to be the job for 100 ninjas. One ninja shows us how perilous the villain is. Dozens of ninjas shows us how awesome our protagonist is. Of course, Wolverine is in the latter category. Not only has he received that valuable ninja training, he's got all that other mutant superpower thing going for him. The ninja number rule was on full display when Logan went to raid the Black Ninja Clan in the Wolverine. After a game of who's the bad guy, some messing with his powers, and a kidnapping, Wolverine found himself having to infiltrate a town of ninjas. What ensued was the usual superhero mowing through a literal faceless horde of ninjas. But then they got inventive. First, stay really far away from the pointy bits coming out of his hands. Seems like the first thing you'd want to do, but alas. Then, everyone attacks more or less at once. The result was the most haphazard case of acupuncture, with cords leading from every arrow embedded in Wolverine's back. Like other instances of Wolverine shrugging things off, this does in fact lead to his capture, however. For the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there have been some big threats, but nothing like the rigid chin menace with the half the universe plan. This has created the idea of what is a Thanos-level threat. In the comics, there are plenty to choose from, and most teams have their own Thanos-level threat. For the Fantastic Four, it would be Galactus. With his Earth is delicious agenda, he becomes a bit of a global problem. The X-Men have Apocalypse, an ancient mutant who not only is powerful in his own right, but can juice the powers of other mutants to make up his 4 horsemen. While Apocalypse is one of many can end life on Earth if they really tried villains, he's also one of the big ones, which is all more concerning when Wolverine took on the role of Apocalypse. In the comic book story Age of Apocalypse, an alternate timeline saw the titular Apocalypse victorious after Charles Xavier had died young, with Logan being a member of Magneto's X-Men as Weapon X. Once Apocalypse was defeated, however, Weapon X campaigned to become Apocalypse, in the process waving off the Celestials from wiping the planet and getting a power boost to become Weapon Omega. So powerful that they had to switch alphabets. Most Age of adaptations don't really end up being an Age of. More of a that time when a legacy villain from the comics has had a one-off with title heroes. In the movies, neither Ultron nor Apocalypse ended up ruling over the planets that they menaced, with the heroes having to fight a guerrilla resistance against them. Age of Apocalypse also included very little Wolverine. A reboot of the series had taken a look at the early days of the X-Men before Wolverine joined, while Days of Future Past used the magic of time travel to find a way to put Wolverine back in the center of an X-Men movie. Age of Apocalypse rendered Wolverine into a cameo role, but they made the most of it. Age of Apocalypse took place right around the time that the secret Canadian Super Soldier Project lost their best candidate, Weapon X, violently. As the young X-Men went about their business, they were provided an assist by a Logan without memory, and in massive amounts of pain, eager to head straight towards anyone he felt had a hand in it, giving him what every superhero wants, a gnarly hallway fight. It's second only to smashing through a skylight. The one thing that never fully translated from the comics to the movies is one of Wolverine's defining characteristics, his berserker rage. Like his rival the Hulk, Wolverine is prone to giving over to his anger and unleashing his savage side until there's no one standing. Controlling that berserker rage is one of the main struggles Wolverine has, trying to go from force of nature to good guy. A guy with claws coming out of his hands going nutso on a horde of villains isn't the kind of thing that can slip under the PG-13 banner without most of it being implied. But an R rating can, in some cases, mean that a movie will open on 2/3 of the screens it would if its rating was PG-13. Then, an R-rated Deadpool changed everything. Wolverine followed suit with an R-rated swan song for the character in Logan that saw an aging Wolverine escorting a new generation of mutants to safety. To face down on a clone of his former self, Logan juiced himself, enabling the aging Logan to reconnect to his savage youth to take out an army and a clone of himself. For bonus points, even X-23 got in on the action. For the most part, people try and think about X3 as little as possible. There are other landmarks in San Francisco. You don't have to mess up the Golden Gate Bridge to prove you're messing up San Francisco. Before Magneto messed up one of 3 bridges onto the peninsula, he held a forest rally for his troops that was attended by, who else? Wolverine. It may not have been a berserker rage, but it did result in quite a few members of the Brotherhood ending up being turned into Wolverine pincushions, again demonstrating that for the most part, folks are still alive because Logan is holding back. That is until Magneto showed up and reminded Logan that his skeleton is magnetic.
He's the best at what he does, and what he does isn't very nice. But also, some of the stuff he does is kind of weird. Wolverine is a more complicated character than you might think. We all know the basics of Wolverine. He heals really fast, his bones are coated in unbreakable adamantium, and he has a sweet set of claws. For most people, that would be all the powers that they would need. But there's other powers and side effects that come with being Wolverine that may not be as well known. With the world's angriest Canadian being the breakaway star of the X-Men franchise at the movies as well, there's even more strange things to know about how the man known as Logan made the leap from page to screen. Let's take a look. One of the main things that makes Wolverine Wolverine is his healing factor. He's not the only Marvel hero that gets a do-over on any mistakes that might cause injury, but he has made the most of it. One of the ways he's done that is by not dying. Like, for a really, really long time. Logan was born in the 80s. That is, the 1880s. Turns out that Logan had been hopping around the world for a while before becoming Canada's answer to the super soldier. In this regard, he shares something with the Incredible Hulk and tortoises. That's negligible senescence. Since the cells are created new and generally tougher, Logan doesn't age traditionally. Unlike a tortoise or the Hulk, Logan does eventually age. In fact, the storyline where he started showing his age, Old Man Logan, became the basis for Hugh Jackman's final appearance as the titular character. Although a part of that is down to the adamantium on his bones poisoning his system. Without that, who knows how long Logan would stick around? For a guy whose signature move is to have Colossus throw him at the most dangerous thing he can find, it's pretty impressive. We all have that thing we'd like to learn if we just had the time. Maybe we wanted to pick up macrame or finally learn how to play the piano, but Fortnite just added a bunch of new maps and skins and there are only so many hours in the day. But if you had an unnaturally long life thanks to your accelerated healing powers, you have times to pick things up here and there. Especially if you're roaming the world trying to find a place in it that makes the best out of your healing abilities and the bone claws that come out of your hand. For Wolverine, that means that he's had the time to not only learn a lot of fighting and tactics skills, but also has allowed him to become a polyglot. Polyglot is a fancy term for someone who knows a bunch of languages. And thanks to Logan's time and wandering feet, he's picked up a lot of languages. And like I said, he's also learned a lot of fighting techniques and had the time to hone that muscle memory and his reflexes to make him a formidable fighter even without claws. One of the hallmarks of Logan for a long time was the mystery of how he got the way he is. He knew that his skeleton was covered in Marvel's unbreakable miracle metal, but he didn't know why. All he knew is that it made him angry. Eventually, Professor X was able to unlock the truth of the Weapon X program that was so traumatic that he ended up blocking it out. But the Weapon X program wasn't the only thing that he forgot. He forgot his own name. No, not his first name, his whole name. Logan was actually the name of the family friend that killed Wolverine's father during an argument. The event had a profound effect on the young Wolverine, and his brain decided that it had enough of thinking about his name, so it didn't. It turns out that his propensity to forget is just a side effect of his healing factor. As a significant traumatic event happens, his brain heals it quickly, which is to say it packs it away and never thinks of it again. Logan's real name is James Howlett. which doesn't sound as cool as Logan. A long life of training, learning, and forgetting everything super bad that happened to you might be enough for most people, but Wolverine exists in the Marvel Universe. There's a lot of different kinds of threats that one can face in that universe, including Werewolf by Night. Is there another kind of werewolf? And actual Dracula. The one thing these two classic monsters share is the ability to make other people like them. Dracula can make people vampires, and Werewolf by Night can make new werewolves out of anyone he doesn't kill all the way. While it might be fun to start thinking about a werewolf Wolverine, don't get used to it. Another aspect of his healing factor is that it also heals curses. How does that work, you ask? Turns out the curses are tied to your cells just like anything else. But Wolverine views cursed cells as injured and replaces them. Just like someone who builds up immunity to any disease, Wolverine's tolerance increases with each attempt. So, while the first time around the curse might take effect for a moment, his body will fight back in the end. Logan is a hard-drinking, hard-smoking man. He has a rough life, so of course he would want to take the edge off now and then. Plus, his healing factor doesn't prevent him from feeling pain, including when his claws come out, so you could excuse him for wanting to numb the pain a little, right? Well, like a lot of things, it's not that simple for old Wolverine. The same thing that keeps him standing when the world is punching and stabbing him also keeps him standing when he's throwing a few back. In fact, if he really wants to feel even a little bit of the effects of alcohol, he's gonna need to take in a lot of it. That's because his healing power nullifies the effects of alcohol. So when you see him throwing them back in moments of quiet despair, at least part of that is him thinking about how much of the stuff he has to buy in order to feel it for just a little bit. That bar tab can get depressing. Now, if there's one thing that we all know about Logan, it's that he hails from the Great White North known as Canada. Oh, Canada! Who knew they wanted a super soldier? Should have asked me. There are a few things that everyone knows about Canada. They like hockey, they're really polite, some of them say about funny, a boot, and the winters are really cold. That last part gets truer the further north you go, especially during the winter. When Wolverine debuted in The Incredible Hulk number 181, it's when the Hulk was trying to find some isolation in the cold northlands of Canada that he encounters the only Canadian that doesn't say sorry. The Hulk was there because he thought no one else could stand the super cold weather. But for largely the same reasons the Hulk could handle it, so can Wolverine. His healing factor allows him to shrug off the damaging effects of extreme weather. In fact, he's been left out in the cold with nothing to protect him before and not only wasn't affected, but ended up just having a nice nap. One of the depressing things about working out is how long it takes to see results. You watch what you eat, you keep your heart rate up, you lift the heavy things, you put them back down, and after a few weeks, you can lift slightly heavier things. In contrast, if you want a burrito, you buy a burrito, then you're eating a burrito. Instant gratification. Part of what takes so long with working out is that the lifting of heavy things damages the muscle, causing it to rebuild stronger. So you have to have the time to compound that process into newer, stronger muscles. Well, when you have a healing factor, that can accelerate the process. Not only does that result in Wolverine having superhuman strength, it also means that he doesn't get worn out like the rest of us. When most of us need a nice laydown and maybe a warm pad after exerting themselves, Wolverine just keeps getting stronger. Really, you're just making him mad. And he starts mad to begin with. There are plenty of animals in the world that have varying degrees of regenerative powers. There are certain lizards that can detach their tail in an emergency and are able to regrow it. Salamanders can regrow limbs and partially damaged organs. Immune cells called macrophages restart the organ and limb building in salamanders and axolotl. Yeah, science! For axolotl, they need those macrophages. Whatever the mutant gene in Wolverine is that makes him regenerate is a lot more ever-present. Just how much Wolverine needs to be left over for him to regenerate? A single drop of blood, it turns out. With conditions, that is. In X-Men Annual number 11, Wolverine threw himself in harm's way to protect Storm, resulting in the villain Horde pulling his heart out. Kalima. A single drop of Logan's blood got on the crystal of ultimate vision, causing that drop to regenerate Wolverine with cosmic powers, which Wolverine shrugged off because he's not power greedy. Even without assistance from a mystic crystal, Wolverine can come back from being mostly gone, even when the Hulk ripped him in half. Deadpool knows what that's like. Another one of Wolverine's main powers is his heightened senses. His sense of smell is so acute that secret identities are a waste of time. Wait, does that mean that someone could figure out superheroes' secret identities just by using a bloodhound? This is what villains get for not being dog people. He also has acute vision, including telescopic vision and night vision. If you want to fool Wolverine, you have to pull out all the stops. Not just in trying to impersonate other people, which takes Mysterio levels of deception, but just trying to get away with telling him that those mutton chops still look current. Just like another Marvel hero with heightened senses, Wolverine is able to use those senses to detect when someone lies to him based on their heart rate. So on top of being a raging, fighting machine that is nearly impossible to stop, you can't even lie to him and say you got a thing to get out of a fight. Granted, an angry man with claws coming out of his hands grilling you would make anyone's heart skip, but it seems to work for him. Most of us think that we have a special connection with our pets. Mostly though, that's because we have a limited number of expectations from us. Flufferstein needs to be fed, head scritched, and the door to be held open so she can change her mind about going outside. Why? Why did you stand there meowing only to walk off after I opened the door? Did you want me to leave? You're cold, Flufferstein. Stone cold. Wolverine does have that special relationship with animals, however. In fact, he has enough empathy with animals that it can go two ways. He can get what animals are after and convey his own wishes. That's down to him using the same set of language tools they have, their senses. By working in the same sensory world as the animals he encounters, including being able to smell pheromones, Wolverine knows where the animals are coming from. Rather than talking to the animals Doolittle style, he uses body language, sound, and positioning to get animals on his side. Oh, seriously, the door again? Why do you hate me, Flufferstein? One of the things that makes the Hulk so formidable is that as his anger increases, the more powerful he becomes, with there seeming to be no limit to the rage he feels. It just so happens that this is a trait he shares with his one-time foe, Wolverine. While Wolverine isn't exactly powered by rage in the same way that the Hulk is, the dude is not exactly a paragon of anger management. Logan actually puts a lot of effort into containing his more primal rage because just like the Hulk, when he takes the cork off the rage bottle, things go off the rails pretty quickly. Maybe not destroy half of downtown Johannesburg bad, but pretty bad. In Wolverine's berserker rage, as we know, Wolverine loses all senses of rationality or control. He becomes the embodiment of to a hammer everything looks like a nail. He'll thrash out at anything that moves. To make matters worse, all of the rest of his powers kick into high gear, including his regeneration, meaning the longer he goes, the stronger and more savage he gets. He did say that what he does isn't very nice. Not everything that Wolverine does comes from his base set of powers. Being a murder machine for over a century means that he's going to run into other people with abilities, and eventually that starts to cross-pollinate. Rogue started out as someone who could just temporarily borrow people's powers until she got into it with Carol Danvers and ended up with a portion of her powers and psyche permanently. We're all waiting for that to happen in the MCU, right? That is going to be great. Anyway, Wolverine has met Professor X more than he remembers. The first time, he was there to kill the founder of the X-Men, but Professor X wasn't into it, so he cleared out Wolverine's mind so he didn't know what he was there for. By way of apology, Xavier installed a certain level of psychic protection in Logan's mind to keep another psionic from poking around in the head of one of the deadliest people in the Marvel Universe, which makes a whole lot of sense. Remember Johannesburg. If you ask, Logan will tell you that he's a loner. He's that quintessential 80s and 90s lone wolf anti-hero. You don't want to get involved with him, darling. He's a rough ride. People get hurt. Don't try and change me, baby. We're both better off if I'm just on my own. A lonely man in a lonely world. Except, Logan is actually terrible at being a loner. He's really more of a joiner. He's been on the X-Men, the X-Force, 3 different Avengers teams, and was a member of Canada's superhero team Alpha Flight. He's even been part of the Fantastic Four during a strange period where that included Spider-Man and Ghost Rider. You heard me. It's not just the team-ups. He's also paired up with various heroes for lengthy adventures as a mentor, bromance, or a reluctant fellow traveler. He even took Kitty Pryde on a tour of Japan. Thanks to his age, he's had time to run into all sorts of heroes, like spending a little of World War II with Captain America himself. He's even teamed up with Spider-Man in a popular storyline. Speaking of Spider-Man, we almost got an epic surprise with the wall crawler and his unlikely mutant friend. Film rights, as we've learned over the last decade, are a tricky thing. For instance, Disney owns the rights to the Hulk, but not to a Hulk solo movie. So now the Hulk piggybacks in other people's movies. Spider-Man's film rights were with Sony until Disney and Sony worked something out. Then they didn't. Then they did again. The mutants were locked away at Fox with the Fantastic Four until Disney won the game of corporate hungry hippo and obtained Fox, bringing mutants and the Fantastic Four back home. Before showing up in Civil War, Spider-Man was almost part of another surprise crossover. Hugh Jackman was scheduled to make a cameo in Sam Raimi's 2002 film Spider-Man. The only thing that held up Wolverine's appearance? They couldn't find the costume. That's right. Not only was Wolverine going to show up in a Spider-Man movie, he was going to do it in the costume. I'm just going to sit down for a second. While we're on the subject of Wolverine on the big screen, after 18 years as the character and numerous appearances, it's hard to imagine anyone else playing the rugged Logan than Hugh Jackman. Sure, he's almost a foot taller than the character he's playing, but he does it so well it just doesn't matter that much. As we prepare for the mutants coming to the MCU and a new set of actors taking on those roles, we can look back at Wolverines that never were. Before X-Men finally hit screens in 2000 with Jackman as Wolverine, there was a lot of fan casting, including superfan Glenn Danzig fan casting himself. Dougray Scott was actually Bryan Singer's first choice for Wolverine, but Tom Cruise said no. Scott was committed to Mission Impossible 2 and wouldn't accommodate Scott's schedule to take on the role of Logan. Even deeper, at one point, James Cameron was eyeing an X-Men movie. His choice for Wolverine? Bob Hoskins of Who Framed Roger Rabbit fame. He is short.
Welcome to CBR. Wolverine is often considered to be one of the most lethal men on the planet, and for good reason. A mutant with superhuman healing, reflexes, and an adamantium skeleton make him a living weapon. Today at CBR, we're exploring just how Wolverine's powers work. Wolverine is a mutant, or a human born with the exceptional X gene that grants him superhuman powers and abilities. Wolverine's mutant abilities have turned him into one of the most potent hunters and trackers on the planet. With superhuman hearing, sight, smell, and taste, Wolverine has senses that make him more proficient at detecting and hunting prey than the world's most dangerous apex predators. He is also gifted with superhuman strength, speed, and reflexes, making him an even more lethal combatant. As he says, he's the best there is at what he does.
What's your name, mister? Logan.
Wolverine is also equipped with retractable claws in both of his forearms. These claws are stored within his forearms and emerge through the skin between his knuckles on each hand. His original bone claws were harder than regular bone and were sharp enough to pierce most organic material and flesh. Perhaps Wolverine's most powerful ability is his superhuman healing. No matter how grievous the injury, Wolverine's body will instantly begin to heal it back to full health. This prevents Wolverine from becoming drunk, succumbing to disease or toxin, allows him to survive ordinarily lethal attacks, and dramatically slows his aging down. Wolverine is not immortal though, as certain injuries can kill him, such as drowning or extreme electrocution or immolation.
Weapon exoskeleton. Let's begin.
When Wolverine became a test subject of the Weapon X program, his skeleton was coated with the unbreakable metal known as adamantium. This adamantium makes Wolverine's entire skeleton unbreakable, and it also makes his claws some of the most dangerous weapons on the planet. Bullets cannot pierce his head, knives and swords cannot cut through his limbs, and his claws can rend nearly anything apart. The flip side to this, though, is that Wolverine is susceptible to magnetism. Fatal Attractions is a prime example of that, drowning due to his increased weight and becoming electrocuted through the metal in his body. There is a misconception that Wolverine is nearly invincible due to his healing powers and his adamantium skeleton. This is not true. He is extremely difficult to kill, but enough blunt force trauma can render him unconscious, and his healing is proportional to the injury he receives. Wolverine can be knocked out, stunned, gassed, and incapacitated, such as when Lord Shingen defeated him with a Bakken in 1982's Wolverine miniseries. Wolverine is a one-man army, but he's not without limitations.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today at CBR. Wolverine is one of Marvel's greatest heroes. No hero is without weakness, however, and Wolverine has a few that make some battles more of a challenge. Despite being able to push well beyond the limits of what an average human can achieve, thanks to a potent healing factor and stubborn attitude, Wolverine does not have super strength. Wolverine's wily nature makes him as formidable as he is unpredictable, which often gives him the upper hand. However, should an opponent be far stronger than Wolverine, there is no certainty that Wolverine will prevail. If Wolverine does lose a battle, his healing factor allows him to recover exceptionally fast. The full extent of Wolverine's abilities is not entirely known, though he has been known to survive nuclear explosions. One component, however, that threatens his healing factor is carbonadium or the Murasama blade, both of which stymie Wolverine's powers. If a villain were to gain the upper hand and render Wolverine immobile from wounds, then either option is a safe bet to keep the hero from recovery. Wolverine likes to dive into fights with heedless abandon. While his tenacity alone is enough to give him the upper hand, he also likes to go at it solo. Being alone is never a good option when facing enemies. In several instances, Wolverine comes face to face with threats who have studied his abilities and found ways to disarm the character. Wolverine's stubbornness is one of his greatest assets in being a memorable hero, but time and again he puts himself in uncertain situations without backup. After the Weapon X project imbued him with an adamantium skeleton, Wolverine's claws and entire bone structure have been given a nearly indestructible upgrade. While the benefits are innumerous, adamantium is magnetic, which means that characters like Magneto can exploit this weakness. In one instance, Magneto pulls Wolverine's adamantium frame from his body, which not only hurts, but weakens him substantially. But if a character like Magneto were to instead leave the adamantium and manipulate it so that it is contorted beyond mobility, Wolverine would not have many options to carry on battle. Wolverine's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. Beneath his rough exterior, bad attitude, and other traits that endear him to audiences worldwide, Wolverine is a sentimental sap. Many of his battles are fought with passion, primarily because he's either diving into his own past to recover a life that was taken from him, or because he can't stand bullies in any shape or form. Sentiment can lead to short-sighted decisions, and passions can cloud insight. Wolverine is usually victorious from even the most impulsive actions, but he can be manipulated if a clever opponent were to exploit his pet fixations.
Little cinematic universe is about to change forever.
As Deadpool and Wolverine takes fans of the MCU through many alternate realities, they come across some surprising variants of Wolverine. Today on CBR, we're looking at every Wolverine variant in Deadpool and Wolverine. When Deadpool and Wolverine was revealed to be a wild trip through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, fans were all in on one major aspect: the idea of seeing variants. Marvel Studios delivers with many epic cameos. With that in mind, here are the Wolverine variants seen in Deadpool 3. The movie opens up by having the Prime Wade Wilson digging up Logan's corpse. Unfortunately, all that's left behind is the adamantium skeleton. Deadpool uses the bones as weapons to kill the Time Variance Authority soldiers who are hunting him down. Wade steals the temporal pad from the TVA's Mr. Paradox and jumps to different realities to find a Logan. One of them has a Wolverine in a white vest working on his motorcycle. It's not Jackman, but Henry Cavill, whom the movie's credits list as Cavill-Reen. Wolverine is a short character in the comics, under 6 feet. Some fans felt Jackman was too tall for the role. The MCU film shrinks him down to look like an Oompa Loompa from Willy Wonka's realm in one of the movie's funniest scenes. Jackman's eye patch wearing Logan from Earth 616 is all suave and elegant with his white suit as he gambles in a casino. Deadpool also jumps in a reality where Wolverine is surrounded by rain and bloodied skulls. This Wolverine is crucified on a giant X, a nod to the iconic Mark Silvestri cover for Uncanny X-Men number 251. Mark Miller and Steve McNiven's Old Man Logan from Earth 807-128 doesn't want Deadpool near his premises or car. The inspiration had to be Clint Eastwood for this one. This alternative reality Wolverine was created in 1994. Deadpool meets the Wolverine from the Age of Apocalypse era, Earth 295, in the back of a nightclub. John Byrne is honored when Deadpool meets his Wolverine. This is the Logan with the brown and yellow costume that Byrne designed in the 1980s. To top it off, there's a shot that pays homage to the cover for Incredible Hulk number 340 from 1987. Deadpool will eventually get the Wolverine scene in all the trailers. This is the Logan who rocks the blue and yellow costume.
Oh, whiskey dick of the claws. It's quite common in Wolverines over 40.
You don't want this.
Wolverine is one of the most famous and recognizable characters in Marvel Comics, thanks largely due to his iconic metal claws. Today at CBR, we're exploring the possibilities of what would happen if Wolverine lost his claws.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
As a mutant, Wolverine was born with several superhuman powers. He has extra height and senses, allowing him to smell and track quarries across great distances. He has one of the most potent regenerative powers in existence. Lastly, but no less importantly, Wolverine was born with the ability to project 3 claws from both of his forearms. These claws are made of bone and were used extensively by Wolverine as he grew into adulthood.
Because of these.
But it was when Wolverine was put into the Weapon X project that he became the near-invincible killing machine he's known as today. By having his entire skeleton coated in the indestructible metal known as
adamantium, supposedly indestructible.
Capable of slicing through nearly any substance on Earth, Wolverine's claws elevate him to being one of the most dangerous beings on the planet.
What kind of monster are you? The Wolverine.
As impervious as adamantium may be, there is always a greater power somewhere in the Marvel Universe. Magneto molds them to his will. Gladiator bends them with his bare hands. Someone uses the power gem to make them shatter in his forearms. Imagine 6 pieces of jagged metal ripping through his arms every single time he went to use them. Wolverine is a world-class martial artist who can go toe-to-toe with Iron Fist.
What if we're setting up for a Wolverine versus Hulk movie in the MCU? It makes a lot of sense. The Hulk personality needs a good reason to return after his long absence, and Wolverine needs a compelling introduction to the MCU. Are there a series of circumstances that would finally bring these two titans together in a smackdown, no-holds-barred brawl? Well, if you look at Hulk's current relationship with his son Scar, we could be setting up for a tweaked World War Hulk type of scenario that sees Scar go on an epic rampage. Maybe President Ross recruits Wolverine to bring Scar to justice, or maybe Scar disrupts Wolverine's isolation, forcing a fight that would finally cause the Hulk personality to return in epic fashion. So what would happen if Hulk and Wolverine fought in the MCU? Let's discuss. So this battle could be everything that fans could hope for. A brutal, game-changing brawl that pushes both characters to their limits and can be as epic, fun, enjoyable, and destructive as we all want it to be. But in order to have our special battle royale and finally get Hulk to fight Wolverine in the MCU, then there's a lot of steps that need to be done first. Both characters need to go through some dramatic changes to set up this conflict and make it something audiences care about. I mean, sure, if the two fought like, I don't know, tomorrow or something, then I would definitely be first in line with a big tub of popcorn and probably one of those big water ponchos people wear on water rides in order to avoid the blood splatter. But there's a way to make it mean something important. I'm going to talk about Hulk's journey first, then Wolverine's story, and then tie it all together in how this fight would actually go down. So Hulk is in a difficult but interesting place in the MCU. He's been chilling for a long time, mostly on the sidelines, and he's completely lost his edge. With the Hulk personality gone, we just have Banner in Hulk's body, which is probably much safer for everyone, but that's significantly less interesting than the struggle of two very different personalities fighting to share the same body. So the easy road with the Hulk would be to just reboot him, wait until Secret Wars, and then introduce a new version of the character who's a bit more comic accurate. Specifically in the comic runs where Bruce and Hulk are hunted mercilessly and just roaming around by themselves. That saves a lot of time in terms of setting our Hulk down a new storyline, but honestly, I don't want that version. I want to see our Hulk continue on this path that he's on, but I want it done in an interesting way. Is that too much to ask? So here's my actual suggestion on how to set Hulk up for his big collision fight with Wolverine. Everything should trace back to Scar. Let me explain. Scar was introduced at the end of She-Hulk, and you would hope has an important role to play throughout the next few years. Just, only if his CGI improves. Like, right now, he kind of looks like if Dominic Toretto became Hulkified by drinking windshield wiping fluid or something, so I hope they switch that up. But the introduction of Scar could be very important. I've been lamenting the fact that we never got a proper Planet Hulk or World War Hulk storyline besides the brief focus on it in Thor Ragnarok. And I think the reason we could never do a World War Hulk is because it's just too destructive and turns our hero into a villain. The MCU can't do that. I mean, I guess they did it with Wanda, but they can't just do it again. But what if Hulk wasn't at the center of World War Hulk? What if it's Scar as the one who's causing ridiculous amounts of collateral damage, and it forces some complicated feelings from everyone involved? We know General Ross is going to be the president now, and if we lean more toward the comics, he's going to hate a rampaging Scar Hulk doing stupid stuff. Ross is supposed to hate Hulk. Maybe Scar does something really bad, goes off the grid, and General Ross decides to mount an enormous manhunt for him, and when everyone fails, he turns to an expert tracker who generally likes to work by himself and be a loner for help. And what's great about this is that it could set the perfect return for the Hulk personality. I imagine there's going to be some difficult growing pains with Smart Hulk and Scar, mainly because Hulk is the father, not Banner. So Banner is going to have to make the decision on whether or not he wants to bring the Hulk personality back and sacrifice the life he built for himself. Maybe in order to save Scar from Wolverine, Bruce has to make the decision to let Hulk out, and that's what sets the stage for an epic clash. Okay, we established what Hulk's motivation would be for fighting Wolverine. Someone's going to take their son away from them, and they're just defending themselves. And that's a pretty easy to see path forward. We wouldn't even technically need another Hulk project to set up this conflict. If the next time we see Banner and Hulk and Scar is in this proposed movie, then that's fine. But it's the other major player in this fight that I'm more worried about. What to do about Wolverine's introduction and backstory? With mutants casually being introduced into the MCU now, it seems like the franchise is going to go with the whole, yeah, they were here the whole time, but just in secret type of explanation. And honestly, overall, I don't think that works for the mutants. I think that's generally a lazy way to explain things. We are in an era with an infinite amount of universes out there, and I always felt like it would be better if the mutants were in their own universe, thus setting up a major conflict between our world and their world. I don't think that's going to happen now. But if Secret Wars takes place before a Hulk vs. Wolverine movie, then I guess there's still a way to make this explanation work. Maybe Secret Wars will be a soft reset of the whole MCU and merge mutants with our world to better explain why we've never seen them before. Because, for real, I cannot handle another Eternal situation where they just shrug and say, yeah, they were here, but never bothered to get involved in any of the major world-ending events that were taking place. Get out of here with that explanation.
What happened?
But okay, with all that said, if there was one mutant who could realistically be around forever but just never got involved because he didn't care that much, then it would be Wolverine. The dude likes to keep to himself most of the time. I could see a situation where they copy part of his previous Fox history and have him fight in all the major wars like the American Civil War, World War I, World War II, and Vietnam before deciding to retire to the wilderness in secret, probably with a kindly woman by his side. Because let's be honest, as much as Wolverine is pretty vicious and feral at times, he he's also just a big lover at heart. So let's say that Wolverine is in isolation somewhere. He's given up on the world, maybe after his adamantium infusion, and doesn't want to be part of this whole superhero environment anymore. That's an interesting place to meet Logan in the MCU. It would be very similar to his Fox X-Men movie introduction, but I would rather the MCU takes elements from Hugh Jackman's version of the character rather than trying to blaze a new path forward. And I think even if they copy that characterization, there's still enough differences in the actual story that I'm going to talk about next to set him apart from the Wolverine we're familiar with.
So you can see the future.
So how would I go about making this movie? Well, I would first start by calling it Wolverine vs. Hulk. It's still unclear what exactly the rights issues are with the Incredible Hulk, and if we can't make a solo Hulk movie, then maybe we can just make him basically the second lead like they did in Thor Ragnarok. That worked pretty well for that movie, so why not just do that again? Which means Wolverine would be the central character for this film, and it would mostly be his journey that we follow. That's not a bad thing. Here's how I would frame the movie and how I think the fight would go. Let me know if you agree with me. So in my version, Wolverine is living in isolation. He's tired of the world around him, and he's somewhere that's sort of away from everything. A small town community in the mountains somewhere. Meanwhile, Smart Hulk has taken Scar away from civilization because his outbursts are getting worse. Banner just can't connect with Scar the way he wants to, mainly because it's the Hulk's kid, not Banner's kid, and Scar has a complicated relationship with the man who essentially erased his true father away. Scar wants to be good, but can't control his rage at all. While training in the mountains, Scar's anger with Banner reaches a boiling point and something catastrophic happens. Scar's rage causes the destruction of the small isolated community, and there are innocent casualties. Wolverine is furious and wants to put down this beast for good. President Ross sends a lot of his own special forces to stop Scar, but of course they're no match for both the Scar and Smart Hulk. Ross doesn't want to send any heroes out for this because he knows that most likely they'll side with Smart Hulk, and Ross wants Scar eliminated. He gets word that Wolverine is on his own quest to stop Scar, and that leads to a recruitment. Ross will give Wolverine anything he wants if he stops this threat, playing up the fact that Wolverine is the only one who can stop him due to his healing factor and his unbiased opinion of Hulk. And then the hunt is on. Hulk and Scar go on the run and try to get off the grid, but they are hunted at every turn by Wolverine. When it finally comes to their big showdown, Wolverine is able to overpower Scar and almost takes him down for good, but here is Banner's big moment. He knows that he can't beat Wolverine, but in order to save Scar, he begs and pleads for the Hulk to finally come out and revert them back to how they were before their fusion. He essentially gives up his great life in order to save Scar. Then, boom, Hulk is back, and what follows is the epic battle that we all want to see. Hulk smashes, Wolverine slashes. These two angry heroes just slowly get more and more ferocious, and they try to tear each other apart. Yes, the tricky part about this movie is that we know that they aren't going to eliminate each other. How do you make this conflict interesting when you know that neither side will win? Well, they need to take a page out of Captain America's Civil War's book and have both characters fundamentally changed from their encounter. Obviously, Banner learns that he can't keep Hulk suppressed if he wants what is best for Scar, so what would Wolverine learn? Well, I think in the end, Wolverine wouldn't want to cut off Scar's head once he knows the whole story. He knows that Scar is an angry kid who needs a good role model in his life rather than just deciding to execute him. It would convince Logan to rejoin society to help it rather than sit on the sidelines, and then we have our full-fledged Wolverine in the MCU. Wolverine and Hulk have great battles because they're both so similar and yet so different. Plus, Wolverine's healing ability makes it not such a one-sided fight. But personality-wise, they have enough commonality where putting them together is interesting. Both of them are angry loners who essentially just want to be left alone, and that's why this would be such an interesting and amazing movie. But what do you think?
Gotcha.
How would you set up a Hulk versus Wolverine fight in the MCU? Do you have a clear winner? Would one hero just beat the ever-loving snot out of the other? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR. See you next time.